Okay guys, I'm sitting in my car. I'm going to try and keep this short and sweet, but I really wanted to chat with you guys and give you a bit of an update. Also, hi, I'm AstroCass for anybody that doesn't know me and is new to my channel. Hello, welcome besties. I love to talk about all things astrology, so that's what these videos are normally about. And today's video is going to be talking about Mars opposite Pluto and the Mars retrograde and just that whole Mars cycle, Mars being in Cancer. Basically, we wanted to kind of discuss that, so that's what we're doing today. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe, give me a like. It's really great for the algorithm if you guys engage with me. With all that being said, let's talk about it because we have this aspect coming up really soon. So with Mars being in opposition to Pluto, this is an astrological aspect that can be quite tense and difficult. So when we're talking about the planet Mars, Mars rules traditionally both Aries and Scorpio. Now, both of those energies are really about violence and anger and conflict, okay? So with that Mars energy, Mars is really about, it's the god of war. It is the planet of motivation, action, passion, what drives us. It is really about cutting things. It's about weapons, anything that's sharp. It can be linked to blood. It can be linked to conflicts, aggression, challenges, competition, all of that kind of Marsian, Mars type energy and words. They're like all that, those themes are all associated with Mars. So it's obviously a very difficult planet to be in opposition with. And then we have the planet Pluto. Now Pluto rules Scorpio in modern astrology, and Mars rules it in traditional astrology. So they both rule Scorpio. So keep that in mind because we're going to talk about that in a minute. But Pluto is all about transformation, crisis, trauma. It can be about power and control and manipulation. It can be about DEATH, those sorts of endings, right? It can be about purification and things that are toxic. It can be about things that are linked to crime and sex. It can be linked to all of those sorts of things, like Pluto rules over the reproductive system in astrology. Mars is also fire. Pluto more so links to like a volcano. It also links to, like, when you think about fixed water, which is Scorpio energy, it is ice. So there's all these kind of things to keep in mind with that Mars-Pluto oppositions. So I guess now that we know a little bit about what Mars and Pluto are and a bit about that Scorpio energy that is very with Scorpio energy, they're very much detectives. It's very much about things that are very taboo and hidden. It's about finding out the truth. They can be very skeptical and they're very powerful, that Scorpio energy. But now we know all about that. What is this opposition about? So an opposition is an astrological aspect. An opposition is basically a tug of war type energy. It's like the planets are fighting against each other and like pulling at each other. So it's almost like, whether this is in your natal chart or it's in a nation's natal chart, anything like that, any kind of astrological natal chart, that energy shows that, for example, in the chart, wherever that Mars Cancer energy is, it almost shows that if you're focusing too much on that Mars, that anger, that conflict, that aggression, you're not focusing on the opposite energy, which is that Pluto in Capricorn energy. So there's a bit of a tug of war energy. So it's almost like you can't use both the planets at the same time. They're kind of like fighting to be, I guess, energetically involved in the event and the situation. So again, it's like that tug of war again. Like when you're focusing on Mars, you can't focus on Pluto. Or if you're focusing all on that Pluto in Capricorn energy, you're not focusing on that Mars energy. And there's just that conflict, that tug of war type energy between these two planets. This can be quite explosive because you have literally the god of war and you have the god of the underworld, Hades, Pluto, Aries, Mars, Pluto, Scorpio, Hades, right? So those two planets in a tug of war energy, is very, very difficult, and this can be quite explosive, and there can be some really big traumatic events that come about with this if that energy is not handled in the right way. Now, I don't want to kind of scare people or have anyone panicking about this, because I want us to be mature and I want us to use this information for our highest and best good. There's always positive ways that we can work with this energy and look into the more positive aspects to have a good outcome. However, what we kind of need to do is think about this. However this plays out globally isn't necessarily going to impact every person's natal chart the same. Like, we all have different natal charts, every country has different charts, so it really depends on what's activated in a person's chart or a nation's chart to how you're going to experience this opposition. It's not going to be negative for everybody. It's not going to be a bad thing. For some people, this is actually going to be a good thing. But globally, we might see some issues in certain nations' charts where that Mars-Pluto opposition is actually triggering some things that could lead to some issues with Capricorn and government figures being in power, because that's that Pluto-Capricorn energy, and the issues with people being really frustrated, especially about their homes, lands, ancestry. That's that Mars in Cancer type energy, and their home and their family. So there's going to be that energy. That's going to be the first Mars-Pluto opposition. It's going to happen in Cancer and Capricorn, that axis there. So Mars in Cancer and Pluto being in Capricorn. That first opposition is actually going to happen around the 8th-ish, the 7th or the 8th of November, which is very close to the election that happens on the 5th of November in the US. That is going to be really big and important and linked to some of the big global events that are going to happen. We then have a second Mars-Pluto opposition. However, this time the signs do change. Now, what's going to happen is that there is going to be an opposition of Mars and Pluto, but Mars will be in Leo, and this time Pluto will be in Aquarius. So it'll be the Leo-Aquarius axis that's activated by this second opposition of Mars and Pluto. However, I also want to point out that Mars will go retrograde at 6 degrees in Leo, and this is going to happen again in like December. I'll grab you the exact date. So it'll be around the 7th to the 8th of December when Mars will go retrograde at 6 degrees in Leo. So I want you to keep that in mind as well, because those dates are going to be very important in that time frame. So when Mars is working backwards and going in retrograde, it means that we're going to be reflecting, revisiting, revising events and situations, both personally in our natal charts and globally with nations charts and events in the world. It kind of means that we're probably going to be going back and revisiting some of the events that happen with that Cancer Capricorn opposition as that Mars moves back to that energy. But again, as I said, the actual opposition by degree is going to be in Leo and in Aquarius this time. So the energy is more about like Leo, the heart, celebrities, royals, leaders, that Leo energy and creativity and influences. Leo literally rules over the heart in astrology. So we might see some big issues with hearts, heart attacks globally. Celebrities, leaders, we might see a lot of issues with the hearts. And this, think back to what was happening in 2020 and 2021 and the get your medications, if you know what I mean. We don't know exactly the implications of what happened when people did partake in getting those events, that medication. I'm trying to be quite careful and mindful how I explain this, but we can start to see some events where people are having some pretty serious heart issues, and it might be quite dramatic, and it might be something that's very, very noticeable during this stage with our Mars-Pluto opposition in Leo. And Pluto will be in Aquarius. That Aquarius energy can be to do with inventions, technology, the internet, AI. It can be to do with aliens. It can be to do with rebellion, revolutions, the people, humanity, society, groups of people, and it can be to do with protests, that sort of energy. So again, we're looking at some pretty big energy when we're having a look at all of this. It's to do with like your audience, social media, the internet, right? So this Mars-Pluto opposition is going to be quite big. Is it going to impact power, the internet? Are there going to be some kind of restrictions? Who knows? Could be. So this second opposition with Mars in Leo at the very early degrees, I think it's roughly about 2 degrees in Leo when this opposition happens, or between 0 and 2 degrees, but I think it's closer to the 2 degree mark, very early on in the Leo Aquarius axis anyway. It happens around the 29th to 30th of December, very end of December is when that second opposition goes. But keeping in mind, these planets will be, and it's not just on that specific day, that's just the day when the aspect happens by degree and is like exactly activated. But we can feel that energy for, you know, weeks after and before, because they will still be quite close and close enough for them to energetically still be in that opposition. So pretty much, looking in your chart, anything from 17 degrees of Cancer to like 6 degrees of Leo will be very activated by these oppositions and that Mars retrograde. And pretty much the time frame is from like now, or like early November, through to like the end of March 2025. We're still going to feel like a lot of this energy because it is a huge cycle. And specifically what we're going to have with like the Mars oppositions and the Mars retrograde, it's like 210 days, that whole cycle. Like it's a fair bit when we think about that opposition cycle and everything that's going on there. And so yeah, end of December, Christmas time and New Year's, this is going to be fun. And it's probably just before inauguration, that's in January, like not long beforehand. Looking very, very interesting. But we have those two oppositions, so the end of December is going to be very, very interesting, as I just said. But then we'll have the last final Mars-Pluto opposition. Again, it'll be in Leo and Aquarius, but this will happen in March. So obviously because of the retrograde, it retrogrades, Mars retrogrades back into Leo. Retrogrades back into Cancer. And when it goes direct after the retrograde and starts to move forward, it'll go back through Leo, and it'll again form that final opposition with Pluto in Aquarius. So that'll be, and again it'll be at the early degrees, like 0 to 2 degree mark. It'll have that Mars Pluto opposition again. This will be quite big. Again, as I said, individually for you and your natal chart, you need to check out your chart, get a reading with an astrologer, or just have a look at your own chart, find out where Leo and Cancer are and where Capricorn and Aquarius are, and find like the last degrees of Capricorn and Cancer and like the early degrees of Leo and Aquarius, and see like what planets are there or what planets it might aspect when these oppositions happen, to find out how this is going to be for you personally. Globally, my predictions are we're going to see a lot of stuff to do with like the internet, social media, rebellion. I think we're going to see a lot to do with heart issues, heart attacks, a lot to do with celebrities, leaders, the royals. There's a lot of people that have Leo rising charts like Donald Trump and like King Charles that I think would be probably going to be big events around this time frame from November to December, even in actually to March, from November to March. We're going to hear a lot about these people, a lot of the celebrities that have that Leo rising or Leo placements close to those degree points. I think we're going to hear a lot about them. And yeah, again, final thing I want to mention is that, as I said, Pluto rules over the reproductive system and Leo rules over the heart, but Leo also rules over children and performing. So again, we might hear a lot more about the issues around celebrities and SA and trafficking. A lot of that stuff, we're going to hear probably a lot more information and stories coming out over this time. Again, with Jupiter being in Gemini, we're going to be inundated with so much information. I already said this before Jupiter moved into Gemini. There's going to be so much information out there that we have to discern what's real and what's truthful and what's not. We have to be really careful about what information we're taking in, because there's going to be so much with that Jupiter Gemini transit, so much information through the media and social media. So keep that in mind. Last and final point I'm going to make is that Saturn rules over both Capricorn and Aquarius using traditional astrology. Saturn is currently retrograde in Pisces. So what we kind of know about this cycle is that Saturn in Pisces is going to bring a lot of karma, a lot of endings. We might see a lot of souls transitioning, a lot of things happening there. Saturn Pisces energy also can be linked to us having to be mature and responsible and face up to the decisions that we've made, especially around medications, spirituality, karmic cycles, karmic events. Saturn rules over those two houses, and it's in Pisces, the sign of transcendence, the sign of spirituality and oneness. And it links to, as I said, pharmacies, medications. And then when you think about that and you think about that Leo energy and the heart, there's a lot there to kind of consider and to think about. And then we also know that the eclipses next year, and we've just had a preview for one, are all going to be in Pisces as well. And the North Node's going to be there. So next year in 2025 and even in 2026, we're going to see a lot of themes around medications, vaccines, about pharmacies and pharmaceuticals. We will see a lot about, a lot about that coming out. And then the Virgo side of it's going to be brought up as well. So doctors, hospitals, nurses, and maybe some issues with not having enough nurses and doctors, maybe issues around our health just in general. That's going to be a big theme for next year. And I feel like some of these events that are going to happen quite soon with this Mars energy is going to eventually link and tie into the Pisces Virgo eclipses, and the North Node being in Pisces next year and the South Node being in Virgo for 2025 and 2026. That's just kind of my thoughts. That's very healing and hospital medical type energy.